is up, guys? Welcome back to Think Shank. Today, I want to talk about the NBA trade deadline, just like everybody else, but probably not looking at the same scope as what you were expecting. This is not a power ranking of teams who won or players who won or anything like that. What I really want to do is step back and consider all of the activity that we saw and the deals through a business lens as far as tracking what this new league product is shaping up to look like around the trade deadline moving forward, because I really do think it felt kind of like a singularity, the culmination of thoughts that had been either shared in very small front office circles or team owner subconsciousnesses. Not only activity, but strategic visions become extremely clear, contending or not, whether teams are bought into their superstar generational player or not, an offense first leaning strategy or approach to winning basketball games, or defensive ones, I think can really be explicated based on the magnitude and directions of all of these trades. But first, just like the title of the video says, I firmly believe that Adam Silver was actually the biggest winner of the trade deadline, and that, my friends, is where I want to start, because this past trade deadline felt very different, to me at least, and it wasn't just that Luka Doncic was moved, albeit before his super max came on the table.
But obviously Luka is a generational talent, so why on earth would you do that?
Awesome, understand that. We need to remove ourselves from the fan pool and try and get into the executive level pools, either inside of the team, inside of the league, or inside of the commercial partners that spend a lot of money investing in league initiatives and their own investments and expansions that Adam Silver has cooped up in his brain. If you were a financial analyst looking at the NBA as a potential investment destination, I think that this was an immaculately successful trade deadline within the context of the new CBA era. Number one is because there was no need for Adam Silver to formally implement a hard salary cap. He really was able to drive a ton of behavior change in his constituents or team owners or front office executives by implementing these very, very crafty and intelligent strategic penalties to layer on top of the historic luxury tax and financial penalties. Would look from the outside that Adam Silver as commissioner has a lot of power to wield to basically evolve the way that he sees fit. Optics reflect very well both on Adam Silver's capability as, of course, the CEO foremost of the private enterprise that is the NBA, as well as the league more broadly as a product, thinking about its durability and sustainability in the market as things like, oh my God, there are too many threes, and this is a promising sign that Adam Silver, if he at least is able to allowing some degree of flexibility without enforcing things like a dictator, it is very promising for financial investments moving forward. He wanted more parity. He wanted more egalitarian distribution of talent, and that is clearly what we wound up seeing. Also worth noting that the potential investors for expansion teams over in Vegas, Seattle, whatever, this looks really good as far as how difficult or annoying it would be to stand up new franchises or even new leagues internationally, providing some kind of a case study or template of how to incentivize more talent getting redistributed across the league. Two, because there were the hanging clouds over the heads of teams to stay under these aprons, there was just a ton more buzz around trade rumors and trade speculations. They were right. There was a ton of player movement, especially at the top of the food chain within the NBA. A lot of stars did get moved, particularly ones near the twilight of their contracts or actually at the end of them. Once players get into their last year or so and they're an all-star or all NBA talent, everybody knows free agency is dead. So those kinds of extensions need to get ironed out ASAP, or else you might run into what happened in Miami. But all of that buzz and all of that movement is just inherently going to cultivate a lot more interest, crazy headlines. I doubt, honestly, Adam Silver expected Luka fucking Doncic to get moved from the Mavericks. But I'll tell you what, it made for a lot of great content. And if the league gets more activity like that the media can feast off of, everybody's happy because everybody's getting a lot of eyeballs and everybody's getting a lot of ad money. But from the fan perspective, there's just a lot more hope. I don't know. The Wizards just got Chris Middleton. Pistons just walked into Dennis Schroeder. Obviously, I'm not saying expectations are irrationally high or what have you, but let's be real, traditionally, those kinds of moves barely would even happen. Now, teams near contention and especially near the aprons are so desperate to either get the final infinity stone that they need to contend or drop the anchor off the ship and try their best to get under that apron level so that they don't face all those penalties. A lot of times, a third team was required to facilitate a lot of these deals. You saw Utah get involved in basically every fucking deal as a minute third team for cash considerations, second round picks, just picking up scraps. But again, because of the requirements of where these teams are in the overall apron landscape, they would not physically have been able to get these deals done. Just a little bit more hope, a little bit more involvement. It is kind of cool to get some new players, even if they aren't, of course, the all NBA guys. It is just cool to have that level of activity in and across the league. And of course, a lot more controversy is just going to get a lot of people talking, a lot of people listening in the NBA. How could you trade Luka Doncic? How could you take a chance on a batshit insane Jimmy Butler? Whatever, just as the NFL is closing up shop. The Super Bowl is tomorrow, fresh off of the trade deadline. Really excited about their new rosters, or maybe they're pissed. Either way, they're listening and they're tuned in. Doesn't really matter. Number 3 is star immunity is gone, and I would actually argue that they are under the microscope even more because, again, of the fear of overspending. You only really get 1-2 max guys per team. Implication of that overall is that all of the regular season now, all 4 months of it in lead up to the trade deadline, increasingly looks and feels like a long training camp. Guys are really going to be jockeying to either stay on the team or get traded to a better contender, which I just think makes for those 4 months to be very, very interesting. But as I'll get into later, I am a basketball sicko and I love to see the new faces and new talents as well as the new strategies to employ and maximize them. But for casual fans, I actually think it is going to be the opposite, because if you are starting the regular season knowing that there is going to be an atomic bomb level of redistribution of rosters and new faces in the locker room, maybe it doesn't even make sense to try and get familiar with the people on your own team, because hell, they might not even be here after early February. That kind of is the cost of doing it, because once the trade deadline pops back up again, all of the crazy names are in the headlines. New pairings or trios are now playing alongside of each other. Everybody, sickos and casual fans, are going to be synced up together in tuning in after the trade deadline, because it's basically go time now. And obviously it always was, but you put that on top of increased level of activity and re-rosterization, particularly at the star levels. There's just a lot more cool shit to learn about and see now. This is going to be the start of the season now going forward. How dare you trade him? How dare you not pay him? Just makes a lot of sense for the product to do very well in the market now as a formal where the rubber hits the road milestone of the regular season. The two underlying drivers that Adam Silver has identified and is capitalizing on to drive a lot more excitement towards the playoffs, specifically more parity throughout the league. All of the talent is just going to be more evenly distributed, which is good for the product for a lot of obvious reasons. The other one that I don't see enough people spotlighting is that the overall tide of talent is rising as well. I actually believe that that was or is the primary driver behind the CBA. There weren't even that many teams that were super ultra big spenders. Yes, the Warriors in their dynasty runs were notoriously doing that, but they were over the hump when this finally was imposed. Steve Ballmer wasn't even winning that many games. I think that the CBA is a preventative measure to prevent team owners from overspending on more and more talented players as they filter into the league. The primary outcome of those two drivers is a shift in how teams have to win at the highest levels. What I mean by that is the shift from superstar to system. We are all aware at this point that prime LeBron even would not even be able to carry whatever his 2016 Cavs roster is to another championship in today's league because it's so fucking good. There is no way it would be possible. That is why system is now primacy over superstar. That is a very, very significant distinction in today's product from the previous one. Luka can't carry you to the finals. LeBron can't carry you to the finals. Shea is definitely not carrying you to the finals. Jokic is obviously the closest one, but we even saw him lose, of course, last year. There's just going to be more volatility in the actual winners of NBA championships closer and closer to March Madness. And because of that, there's actually more consistent buy-in and interest from fans every single postseason because how many contenders are there in the league today? Just more opportunity to sell more shit and advertise and yada yada because more people and teams feel invested in the postseason. Important to note that that is a year to year trend that we are going to see now. Pivoting over now to the repercussions of the product itself. Number one is unsurprisingly that GMs and coaches will simply have to be under a ton more pressure now, as well as take on a lot more responsibility than ever before. Championships are now won by system, not superstar. You can't be a ho-hum, middle of the pack owner, business executive, savvy seller, and just hope you fall into getting a Cooper Flag, a Zion Williamson, and that was your golden ticket, and now you can kick your feet up. Not even close. There is no way to win in a heliocentric model anymore. So the nature of getting the broader roster right in order to be able to contend and compete effectively against a variety of diverse opponents and strategies is really, really hard. And it's also really, really essential. Look across the league, there are so many good teams now with so many unique players' strengths and strategies that you're gonna have to prepare for, you end up with potentially risking what happened to Denver last year, which is really, really unfortunate. I personally believe Denver would have beaten Boston in the finals as well as the Mavericks for sure. Again, because of the clash of schematic styles, Jokic was going to beat the shit out of Porzingis. He is a skinny twig and his center of gravity is way too high. Al Horford is 65 years old. That's its own conversation, but you understand my point. You can bet your bottom dollar that Brad Stevens and Joe Mazzulla were thinking they're lucky fucking stars, that really the only team that probably could have beaten them due to this schematic difference was beaten by an owner who actually built Jokic's own team, designed it in order to beat him, yada yada. GMs and coaches have a lot more responsibility, and the nature of delivering on those responsibilities successfully just got a lot harder. 2, the currency of contention is increasingly depth now because of 2 things. 1 is the regular season seeding in lead up to the trade deadline. We are all aware of the very cunning and savvy move by the Cavs front office to acquire DeAndre Hunter. Phenomenal physical phenotype and profile, size, reach to defend. Tatum and Brown, that is of course one of their special strengths, having point forwards. Not a ton of teams do. Orlando, whatever, really not a ton. It was able to, 1, leverage its depth to beat the fucking shit out of everybody in the regular season, and it goes without saying their depth was also really fucking good too, and they really enjoyed playing with each other. But they used the depth to win a bunch more games in lead up to the trade deadline, where they got serious and then used that depth to flip into DeAndre Hunter, aka the final Infinity Stone that they felt they needed to truly position them into that upper stratosphere of NBA contenders. The second part is the supercharging of the roster at the deadline. So you need that depth to weather the storm of regular season injuries and overwhelm teams for a lot of wins, to position yourself really well in the seedings for home court advantage and matching up with the worst teams earlier. Then 2, to supercharge the roster into the final form of the playoff version of it, to finally catapult yourself into true contention. 3 is deadline D-Day. I'm so creative. I'm sorry, I can't stop. All of this shit about the Dallas Mavericks fans like rioting at American Airlines Center just really makes me laugh, but also it's just all this hostility and violence. So I guess that's where the D-Day came from. But the deadline D-Day doesn't just refer to getting your superstars out of the building, hopefully flipping them into either really good long-term assets or even better fitting ones to integrate into your existing system. Also brings a lot more transparency of the front office's stance on contention, because again, of the volume of teams that are going to be jumping ship, trying to get under that second apron, avoid the penalties, but then also the other teams that are bona fide contenders or trying to get off of the cusp into that category will try to find their final Infinity Stone in the haystack. And so I just think there is just not going to be as much ambiguity around, oh man, are the Hawks gonna make a move and go for it this year? Are the Kings finally gonna blow it up? Fuck no. First of all, fuck that team. They are one of my favorite teams to follow, and I'm really happy for Fox, and I actually crucified him when he was making a scene and trying to get himself traded, but based on this past deadline, it is exorbitantly clear that the front office is completely inept, and I totally don't blame Fox for getting the fuck out there. Teams like the Sacramento Kings, Chicago Bulls previously were hanging out in purgatory, just never admitting to their fan bases, yeah, we're tanking, we're gonna reset this, you know, try and get our draft chops back up and fire up the old development pipelines and player coaches. No, we're just gonna say we're contending and keep getting mediocre pieces and stay under the luxury tax and really just prioritize maximizing their profits by staying under the luxury tax, but not actually elevating the product overall, which is what the fans actually want. Now it is completely binary. You are buying because you believe you actually have a meaningful chance to win, or you are selling and deciding which teams and to what extent you want to actually assist in their endeavors and in the process help yourself move along in the rebuild process. 4 is what I am calling the Jrue Holiday Easter egg hunt. Basically sounds like what it is. It is my own personal belief, just like Denver would have beaten the Celtics in the finals. Given the way that things had shaken out for Boston, I'm not just bitching about their injury luck. I don't think that Boston wins the championship even if they don't face Denver in the finals without Jrue Holiday. Portland low-key dictating the actual outcome of who would win the inevitable championship last year by sending Jrue Holiday to the Celtics, which put them way over the top as far as schematic juggernauts for the teams they ended up playing. Did not play Giannis, they did not play Embiid, they did not play Paolo, they did not play Jokic. They literally only played guard-piloted teams that now its best defensive backcourt, I don't even know since when. It's gotta be up there all time because it's fucking suffocating and it's, again, utterly atrocious that they were able to get that last Infinity Stone, not Kristaps Porzingis at all. What they needed last year was Jrue Holiday, and everybody knows it. I would have had him as Finals MVP, moreover, because of the fact that they were playing a Luka and Kyrie piloted team, and he was all fucking over both of them. That is my point. That is a microcosm of what is to come. This whole Easter egg hunt for the final Infinity Stone that is going to be dependent on who is left in your conference that poses the biggest threat. The Cleveland Cavaliers dropped 2 pretty unfortunate pieces, in my opinion. Both LeVert and Niang were actually really meaningful and great pieces for the Cavs team, but looking around at the Celtics in the context of the playoffs, obviously they needed a longer, stronger defensive body in their starting unit to match up against them, while they were able to retain the key pieces of their bench: Dean Wade, Ty Jerome, Sam Merrill, Max Strus. Every team is going to be looking for their DeAndre Hunter now, and I mean, we really did kind of see it with the Jimmy Butler move. According to Nico Harrison, the Anthony Davis move, which is going to be its own video, but I truly do believe it. Of course, provided that AD is healthy. He lasted for 3 quarters today and looked like a top 3 player in the NBA, but inevitably had some kind of groin injury. I don't really know. It happened like an hour ago. The game within the game now, leading up to the deadline, is which teams are left, which teams are meaningfully going to contend, which ones pose the biggest threat to me, what holes do I need to plug, which teams are gonna sell. Oh, boom, X to Y to Z, get a third team. Utah, come on in here, take a seat, hear me out. All right, let's go. Like, it's just gonna be like this every single year for all these contending teams. I'm trying to make this list additive or a cumulative thing where they kind of build on top of each other. So GM's under a lot more pressure. Therefore, their job security is going to be less intact. Depth meaning a lot more as far as sustaining injuries and having assets to flip at the trade deadline for this reason. The D-Day aura of the deadline, where it's kind of like Judgment Day and every team is going to have to look themselves in the mirror. Are we actually going to stand a chance? Does it actually make sense to be paying this much luxury tax? If not, let's just start selling, get people on the phone. All right, can we help facilitate a deal? Jrue Holiday Easter egg hunt. Which teams might be interested or need one of our players to be their Jrue Holiday? You know, it's all kind of connecting. Once you acquire that final Infinity Stone, there is an accelerated system and culture integration needed because now it is early mid-February and we have 2-ish months now, which is really not that long, man, like 8 weeks, 8.5 weeks or so. I think the plan is mid-April. They don't have a ton of time to integrate these new final Infinity Stones into the system. It's incumbent on both learning the actual schematics and play calls and getting your actual initiators or facilitators who understand the new guys' preferences and strengths and spots, but it's also cultural. So the Jimmy Butler experience in Golden State, honestly, if him and Draymond just start sumo wrestling next week, if I'm Joe Lacob, I'm totally for it, because that shit needs to get way the fuck out of the way long before the playoffs begin. Let them beat the fuck out of each other. I don't even care, because we don't have a lot of time to get this shit right and get it going before the playoffs start. Less ego on the players' behalves is going to be necessary. If you are being dealt in what looks like the Jrue Holiday final Infinity Stone type of situation, that should feel pretty fucking flattering. So therefore, don't show up on your first day of work with your dick out, talking crazy and being a douchebag. Buy into whatever the system is that is in place, and also receiving teams of those players. You better know what the fuck you're doing when it comes to player coaches. It's something I don't see covered or mentioned nearly enough. The people on the organizational training staff, coaching staff that actually have in their job description to build meaningful relationships with players, and if needed, translate messages from the coach, be a mouthpiece of the organization as well, convey different messages, be able to make the players feel like they can confide in you. All of those types of things I actually do think matter, especially in a situation like DeAndre Hunter's on Cleveland, where Cleveland's had maybe the best culture of any NBA team this season. They're so deep. They play together for so long. They're so confident. Guys are finally healthy, and they are an absolute buzzsaw so far. They definitely gave away a big voice in the locker room in Georges Niang. I actually think that that is a pretty significant loss. But now they need to integrate DeAndre Hunter, who has obviously not been a part of any of that experience so far. So making sure that he is bought in, aware, feels really fucking valued, which I'm sure he does, but people are people. So, just another note that I thought about. 6 is super duper interesting, maybe the most interesting of all of them. Egalitarian strategy innovation, not your heliocentric, everybody stand around and watch Luka or James Harden or Shea. More egalitarian strategy is going to be innovated across the NBA, pending the strengths of the roster. One, to of course optimize the better and better talent coming into the league, as well as the unique strengths of the roster. But now it's also to minimize any disruption that might come in the event that they trade one of their stars. I doubt every team is going to start trading their super max candidate like Nico Harrison, but maybe they have to trade Jalen Williams down the line. A very real reality that is possible. If that's the case, you better have guys ready to step in and fill roles, Aaron Wiggins, for example, whoever, to build that level of confidence and familiarity or preparedness. You have to be employing more egalitarian strategies to begin with, get guys more familiar in big moments against good opponents. Like I've said in earlier videos, this is the beginning of the extinction of heliocentrism, because every single team is going to be more talented, meaning everybody on the floor is a triple threat, also meaning that every player has to be elite defensively, because you can't take plays off, because again, everybody's so fucking good. So here's the process flow. Innovating more egalitarian team level strategies is more necessary now to minimize disruption from exchanging key pieces of the roster, maybe not your supermax eligible players like Nico Harrison did, but you understand the point. That leads to the inevitable extinction of heliocentric offense, or just all around basketball. I don't know, Rudy Gobert and the Utah Jazz like 4 years ago, which then means that homogeneously elite defense is increasingly table stakes in order to contend. The best teams are going to have threats at all 5 positions, which means on your team, all 5 guys have to be pretty fucking great at defending their positions, other positions, all across the board. All this boils down to a wave of egalitarian, more decentralized basketball coming down the pipeline, where you have to be able to trust not only the 5 specific guys on the court to have meaningful roles on both ends of the floor, but also the 6, 7, 8 guys atop your roster, because all of a sudden you might realize Aaron Wiggins is ready to step into the Jalen Williams shoes, and now we can get a lot better by plugging a different hole, trading Jalen Williams and saving the max contract money, having Aaron Wiggins step into his role. Just as an example. And then last but not least is Junkyard ball, which I am just recalling and referring to generating turnovers and scoring in the fast break, crashing the offensive glass to get offensive rebounds, getting second chance points or getting fouled, whether from offensive rebounds or just generally being more physical to manufacture points at the free throw line. That play style is going to proliferate in popularity because of that table stakes requirement of elite homogeneous defense in your 1 through 5, because it is now an established fact that the top contending teams in both conferences have elite offensive threats at the 1 through 5, which means you just simply have to have really, really elite defenders on the floor at all times for your team at more versatile positions and yada, yada, yada. Since that is a table stakes requirement, if you want to even get to the starting line of the race towards a championship, fortifying your defense is going to be an acquisitional priority. You cannot beat the Celtics or Oklahoma City if you cannot stop them from scoring, because the odds are that they can stop you. You're gonna see a lot more Rockets style of offense where the defensive potency far outstrips the offensive one. Most of their game is predicated on getting to the foul line, crashing the offensive glass, and that style of what I'm calling junkyard ball. That playing style is additively advantageous because it's a tactical exploitation of the defensive structures of those elite teams, predominantly emphasizing stopping the other team from scoring from behind the arc at the expense of protecting the most efficient regions on the floor, which is the rim and the free throw line. Oklahoma City just had to scoop up Daniel Tice from the New Orleans Pelicans basically for nothing, which is bonkers as a side note, because Denver, Lakers, there are a billion teams that really needed a simple fucking body as a backup big to soak up minutes, and somehow the Thunder just walk into Daniel Tice for literally nothing. It's like maybe a second round pick and some cash. It just blew my mind. They did that because of the move that Dallas made, where they doubled down on this exact vulnerability that Dallas and Nico Harrison knew Oklahoma City had. Oklahoma City only had 2 viable centers on its entire roster. If they are going up against Anthony Davis at the 4 with dual interchangeable bigs that are also very physical, if Chet gets his 3rd foul partway through the 2nd quarter, you are fucked, because now you are not going to be able to stop that tandem bearing of AD and Lively or Gaffer. That's way too much size and athleticism. You're seeing this growing trend now of teams like Nico Harrison realizing, yes, we're cutting out the mid-range to only do rim or threes. A lot of teams like Boston, let's say, have optimized it for the 3, but then others, really only Jokic and the Denver Nuggets, have really exploited the flip side of it, which is the rim. And I don't qualify Minnesota as this, because as good as Karl Anthony Towns is and was for them, he was a floor spacing big, albeit a very good one from beyond the arc. This is a different fucking animal. This is Apex doubling down on size, length, and athleticism in the front court to become the kings of this junkyard ball style of play, Lively and Gafford are going to get every single defensive rebound, which is going to let their guards and smaller guys get on and run every single time. They're also going to block a shit ton of shots. Good luck to Shai Gilgeous finishing over all of that size, as well as Jokic, who tries to live in the paint every single night. It is a clear rebellion to the three-point revolution. This is one of my underlying theories of where the league is trending, because the viability of Junkyard ball is really, really well positioned for the postseason. You simply can't scheme your way out of trying to not foul Anthony Davis. He is literally going to score 65 points if you don't have the physical bodies to get in his way and slow him down near the rim. Whereas you can play the Boston Celtics with a pretty weak perimeter defense, and hey, maybe their outside shot just doesn't fall. Maybe they're having one of their increasingly common kind of spaced out of focus games. There's just way more variance in those types of shots, and that's why I say exploiting the tactical defensive weaknesses of Oklahoma City and Boston, for example, where they are so focused at stopping the other team's threes, where they now are potentially going to be at an even bigger disadvantage, because again, this type of Junkyard ball cannot be stopped if it is so insurmountably disproportionate in size and length and athleticism. And so yeah, now you see Oklahoma City going to just grab Daniel Tice. We might just see this rebellion with front court size, depth, and athleticism become more and more popular, again, as a rebellion to how defenses have evolved to stop the three. And so honestly, that's why I just think that Nico Harrison traded for Anthony Davis, is because that's where Oklahoma City and Boston are the most weak, is their centers. Everybody is aware of that. And the ceiling of the Luka Doncic outside in style of offense, where he also is a negative on defense, that cost benefit analysis was just not going to be worth it or feasible for coming out on top against today's top contenders.